Gnomes and Gardens was written by Nigel Suckling, and the most surprising aspect of this book is that he's not talking about the plastic ones. Here Nigel charms us with some fairy tales of the magical gnome which he says have lived happily and mostly invisibly alongside humans since the dawn of time.
Well, here are some gnome musicians. Being a fairy people, music is of course one of their favourite occupations. This particular gnome is called Sid. It reminds me of my grandfather who used to play the cello and used to complain about the gnomes upsetting his garden shed every time we tidied it up. Down there's a little fellow who you can probably barely see, and the way he melds into the stone makes you realise how easy it is for real gnomes to be invisible whenever they choose.
In his book, Nigel explores the origins and folklore surrounding the garden gnome. He would even have us believe they really exist.
Over here we've got dwarfs from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, of course, who are slightly unusual. Dwarfs are mostly underground creatures and they spend all their time mining, as they did in the story, but they're unusual in having a house above ground. Well, we did come across one gnome who was in stocks and was very unpopular with the rest, and it turned out that he had drunk too much dandelion wine and upset all the rest, and we were told it was quite rare because they're quite fond of dandelion wine and beer and stuff like that. But getting roaring drunk is not considered the done thing, and the stocks are generally used for that. They lead them along there and lock them up and let them loose a day or two later. Real garden gnomes are a kind of fairy who help out in the garden and go around doing odd jobs and attach themselves to people. Tidying up the small jobs is what they're good at, the details of a garden. And you can also tell you've got gnomes in the garden when there's sort of a magical touch in where the flowers grow, in proportion. Instead of just one taking over, you can tell the gnomes at work when they naturally tend to balance each other without too much effort on the part of the gardener. There have always been some people who can see them, and most people can't, except in special circumstances. Here we have a king and a queen gnome. Kings and queens among gnomes are very rare because on the whole they're democratic people and they don't actually like being ordered around much, but occasionally they've tried copying other fairies and having kings and queens, and there we see a couple, actually quite cheerful. In the book you'll see a couple more from quite famous ones from an experiment in being kings and queens, but it didn't last that long. They enjoy just gardening, really. They enjoy just looking after creatures and plants, and they like to see a garden grow well. They like to see it well balanced. It's like music to them. A good garden to them is like music. It's like a symphony of all the different plants and animals together. The best way to attract a gnome into your garden is to get a statue like this and plant it somewhere and not mind what people say about it. But it's not actually necessary to have a statue of gnome in the garden to have real gnomes. One of the best ways is to like leave a wild patch behind your garden shed. That's a wild patch with things like old flower pots, something that they can actually turn into a home without it being too obvious. Gnomes are totally friendly with all small animals, really. They're especially fond of snails. Birds, of course, yes, they help out the birds with their nesting and everything like that. And all the other animals, even some that are enemies of each other, yes, they're friends to all the animals. Mostly gnomes are vegetarian, but fishing is a little... they do actually quite enjoy it every now and again. It's a little exception they make to their rule of being friendly to all the animals. If you suspect you've got a gnome in your garden, it's best not to talk about it too much or boast about it, because they tend to take offence and move away. Look around and you'll see plenty more statues here. But these are only statues. If you listen more carefully and look out the corner of your eye, wherever you are, you might see the real thing.